Hey guys, how you doing? It's Mr. Forgione. Hopefully you guys are doing okay. First off, I apologize for the way I look. I know it's a little scruffy, but struggle's real at this point. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of guidance with regard to the PowerPoint that I threw up on externalities. So I just want to keep this pretty short, but kind of go through a few of the terms, at least in the early part of the PowerPoint, kind of explain in a little bit more detail exactly what an externality is. So hopefully you guys have seen the slide where it says that externalities are essentially effects to bystanders. Okay, so a bystander is somebody that is not involved in a particular transaction. They had nothing to do with it, but they're still getting impacted by it. Now, we all have had externalities happen in one form or another. We just haven't called them that. I'm sure at some point, one of you guys, or maybe several of you guys, have had a situation where a couple of your friends are getting into some drama, they're getting into some beef, and you had nothing to do with it. You're not on either side. You just are kind of a bystander, and yet you still got brought into it one way or another. That's actually an externality. You weren't doing anything, but yet you still got mixed up in the drama. That's an externality. We can have externalities that are positive, and we can have externalities that are negative. An example, just as for one thing, of like a positive externality, if you've ever been in a situation where, let's say, you found some money on the ground somewhere, and you kind of look around, no one's around, no one seems to have dropped it. It just kind of, you were at the right place at the right time. You didn't do anything to earn that money, but yet it's finders keepers. It's your money. That would be an example, sort of a positive externality. Example of maybe a negative externality. There's a lot of different ones. I think one that I used in the PowerPoint was pollution, where there are people that did not pollute something. They didn't throw their trash in a certain area, but yet they're still affected by it because now they can't swim in a certain area. Smoking would be a really good example of a negative externality because there are people that have neither bought cigarettes to smoke nor sold cigarettes and yet are negatively impacted both in terms of things like secondhand smoke that can affect your asthma, possibly being close to a smoker where you start smelling like smoke. All of those types of things can be negative externalities. So the question always becomes, all right, what do we do about these different types of externalities? Well, if you are the government and you're looking at a negative externality, typically the best thing that you can do is you want to try to reduce the quantity. You don't want to completely get rid of something like, let's say, cigarettes, simply from the standpoint that there's a lot of jobs created by it. And so you may not want to get rid of it. I shouldn't say you don't want to, but you may not want to completely get rid of cigarettes, but you want a lot fewer people smoking them, right? And so what you would want to do to maybe try to get fewer people smoking the cigarettes or to get fewer people polluting, to get less pollution, what you want to try to do is tax it. And so you put a tax on a negative externality. What that does is it increases the price, it increases the cost of the item, and then fewer people are willing to pay for it. So that would be an example of something that is that's a negative that we sort of try to handle with taxes. By comparison, a positive, what we want to do is try to subsidize. Now, a subsidy is when the government gives money for a particular purpose. So, education would be an example. Those of you that are seniors, if you have filled out your FAFSA and you've applied to the federal government to try to get financial aid, if you've received something called a grant is basically the same thing as a scholarship. It's money that does not have to be paid back. You may ask, well, why is the government giving this money out? Why is the government just giving scholarships or free money to people to go to college? Well, the reason they're doing that, they're trying to increase people's education because education is a positive externality. You say, well, wait, how is that a positive? Well, if you're in an area where there's higher levels of education, it's very likely that your home values are going to be higher. It's very likely that there's going to be less crime in those areas. So even if you didn't go to school in a particular area, you can still benefit from that. If you think about people like that are in the tech field, people like Bill Gates with Microsoft, or people that have worked at Apple, Steve Jobs, obviously late Steve Jobs. we benefited, I think all of us have benefited through some of their creations, things like iPhones and different products. We've benefited from their technical expertise and their education, whether it was a formal education in terms of college or just practical education. We all benefit from those types of things. So that's essentially what we want to try to do. You tax a negative to get less of it, you subsidize a positive to try to get more of it. So that's kind of the basics on externalities. Tell me how this, if you don't mind, comment in the comments below if you like this or if you thought this was kind of a weird way of doing it. If there's things that you want me to change in future videos, let me know. Or if you want me to kind of scrap the videos altogether, that's fine as well. I just wanted to give this a shot. Thanks a lot, guys. Hope you have a good weekend.